Assalamu alaikum, Runtings Rude Y, Nabil Aziz, becomingthealphamuslim.com, and the Becoming the Alpha Muslim podcast. Welcome to another episode, and we got another special guest with us today, another non-Muslim, and you'll figure out why, because today's topic is on parenting, specifically on fathering. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have not seen any dad blogs, Muslim dad blogs, from what I recall, in English. And that's actually technically a good thing. That means the dads are busy out, earning a living and providing for their families. So they don't have as much time to sit around writing blogs like the women do. And that's a negative as well, because right now the Islamic blogosphere, or the Islamic media online, is basically dominated by women, and sadly feminist women at that. And also, if you would have noticed, if you've ever read any dad blogs by non-Muslims, because they're mostly non-Muslim and people of other faiths, i.e. not Muslim, they all sound like they've been written by faggots. So we're gonna and don't get me wrong, my guest today isn't one of those. He's an outlier, actually. His name is Neil White, and he owns the blog thisdaddoes.com. And I like Neil's writing because it's very masculine, it's very traditional, and he takes his fathering seriously, obviously. And we're inviting him on the show because I haven't talked about parenting yet, except for the Warrior Monk episode with Ed Lattimore, but that was a side topic as opposed to the main discussion. So Neil, how you doing?
Hi Nabil, how are you?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Hope you're having a good Saturday.
Yeah, I am. Yeah, it's the sun is shining. I'm in Scotland, and the sun's shining for a change. So it doesn't always. It's not always as sunny as this here, but it's I'm sitting next to the window. I've got sun coming in, so yeah, everything's good.
Are you a Glaswegian?
I am. I'm not a Glaswegian. I was born over in the east of Scotland, and then I moved to Glasgow when I was 20. When I was 21, and I lived and worked there for 11 years. And then just before Christmas, I moved north into just south of the Highlands, which is where my mum and dad live, and I wanted to be closer to them because it was about 2 hours drive. So yeah, I'm not a Glaswegian, but I do understand when Glaswegians speak to me. I understand what they're saying, which I didn't at first.
Funnily enough, I've been invited by another Scottish guy, Thor Holt, who you might have listened to as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's. You're married. You have kids.
That's right. Yeah, so I've been married it'll be 8 years in April, and I've got 2 kids who are. So my son is 4.5. And my daughter, she's 2.5.
Okay, I have 3 daughters. Mine are 5, 3, and 1.
Okay, that's good. All girls.
Yeah. So in Islam, it's like it's sort of it's like a virtuous thing to have a lot of girls. So if in my case, it'll be easier for me to get into paradise technically if I die as a Muslim.
Okay.
Because I have more girls.
That's good. Am I right in thinking that the girls in your family, they carry the honor for your family? Is that right?
Well, that would depend on how if your society is like tribal. That's more a feature of Arabian society or tribal societies, like that, Afghani society, Pakistan, and things like that. Yeah, I mean, it depends really, because I think in all cultures, to some extent, the girl carries the honor of the family. Even in Christian cultures or Western cultures, there is a, I mean, the daughters are treated slightly differently
Yeah.
in terms of how they're treated, how much care is taken of them specifically. They don't get to do the whole boys will be boys, run around type thing.
Yeah. No, that's right.
Is that something
That's right.
Is that something you've noticed as well?
I think that's a good observation. I think that that is probably changing more. But when you were saying that, I was thinking about like girls who are like maybe like running around, like sleeping around. Like a girl who does that, like she'd be called like a slut or a tramp. Whereas a boy who does it, it's almost expected. Certainly in Western cultures, that kind of behaviour is like, that's what boys do. So it's not a big deal. So I think that's an observation. Although I think that kind of attitude is changing a little bit.
And it's changing in Muslim societies as well, because we have to deal with the same sort of societal changes as that you are. As the Muslim societies become more modern. So tell me about This Dad Does. Why did you start the blog? Obviously, you have a different way of delivering your content. So I figure that you have a specific purpose in why you have this blog.
Yeah, it's a strange one because I was thinking about this today, and when I first kind of came up with the concept. Initially, I'd come up with it as a way to maybe provide an income. I was going to do like lots of reviews of like things that dads would maybe want to buy, and then I'd get the affiliate income from that, and that was the original. That was what I kind of imagined when I was first coming up with the idea. But as I began to develop the idea and I started to write, then it changed into me wanting to fill what I saw as a gap in what is available online as a resource for dads. So what I had seen and what I continue to see is that there isn't a lot of good information for dads that have a traditional approach to fatherhood, have a traditional approach to masculinity, and I want to fulfill a traditional role of a father within their family. So there are other dad blogs around, but they don't focus in on that issue, and that was something that I wanted to develop. I felt like I had a lot to share on that subject, and I knew other dads that felt the same way as me, and I knew that if I started to write and I started to share that message, I would come into contact with other fathers who thought the same things as I did and valued the same things as I did, and that has continued to develop. So I think I'm maybe coming up for about a year and a half that I've been writing on This Dad Does. I started it in September 2015. But I didn't launch it until November of that year. But yeah, it's definitely developed, and I'm definitely seeing a response. And I think since that I've come into contact, there's other bloggers now and other writers who are thinking the same things as me, and other I don't want to call them dad blogs because that's got a kind of a connotation in my mind, and I think we'll probably speak about that in a wee bit, but. And there's other writers out there, other fathers who are writing similar kind of things to me, which is great. I love that, actually, that there's others that are reading what I write and I'm reading what they write, and we're talking about similar issues. I think that's great.
And what sort of topics do you write about now? You don't necessarily only write about fathering, do you?
I don't know. So there's a number of categories on the website that most of my writing fits into. So for me, personal fitness and personal improvement through fitness has been a a central part of my life for a number of years now. That wasn't always the case. I wasn't always into fitness. I used to be actually quite unfit and didn't live a healthy lifestyle or eat a healthy diet. I used to drink quite heavily, and I wouldn't live a good life. And that changed a few years ago for a variety of reasons. But since then, I've taken a much stronger and much more focused approach to the way that I look after my body and keep fit and healthy. And so I do write about that from time to time, although at the moment I'm trying to pivot away from that, because actually what I see is that a lot of my website traffic, a lot of my blog traffic is focused on a lot of my fitness stuff, whereas for me, for the longer term, my vision for the blog and for the website is developing more the kind of the fatherhood and the message of some of my maybe what you would call the edgier stuff on the blog as well. But the fitness stuff that's definitely a part of it, and I see it as part of the whole picture as well. So that as I try to develop and document my journey and my mission as a father, that all these elements of fitness and healthy eating. I also write about the outdoors a lot as well, and that's been a big part of my identity as I grew up, and I'm trying to do that for my kids as well, as raising them to value and enjoy being outside, which isn't always easy when you live in Scotland and it's -4 on a Saturday afternoon, which is not today, thankfully, but sometimes it can be. That's a challenge. Sometimes there's not enough clothing in the world to put your kids in to get them outside. But yeah, so that's a big part of it. So that's the categories in the blog, I think. So I do like fitness, nutrition, outdoors and adventures, lifestyle, and father and son. That's the kind of main stuff that I do. So the father and son has developed over time, but I actually started writing about father and son stuff because when one of my big influencers, and I know this will be the same for you, is Mike Cernovich, who wrote Guerrilla Mindset, and reading that book was a big turning point in my life, actually. But he tweeted one time, he said, like, why is nobody writing about father and son issues? Like, why is nobody writing about that? And I was thinking, like, I've got a lot to share on that, actually, and I've got a lot of thoughts on that. So I started to develop that part of the blog, and actually since then, a lot of that writing has been very popular and well received. So, which is good, of course.
So it sounds like the blog is quite popular, and I notice almost all of your articles have a decent amount of comments on them, and then like one comment, the ratio is like you get like one comment for every like 200 views or something like that. It's just a general rule of thumb. So that means there's a lot of people reading your blog, and that's great. Does the web traffic reflect that?
I think it does. I think web traffic is an interesting one because I know a lot of people say, like, oh, my web traffic, this page has like this many thousand views, and I think with traffic, I was listening to a book, actually. I listened to a lot of audiobooks, and I was listening to one about startups, and the guy was talking about what he called vanity metrics, which is where you focus in on things that are measurable, like, for example, website traffic, and you say, oh, because this is high, this shows that what my product or what I'm writing is good, is being well received, which isn't always the case, and traffic is like that. I think my traffic is steady. It has been increasing at a steady rate. I've had a few posts that have had a lot of traffic in a short period of time. But I think the traffic is one thing, but if I had to choose between a high number of page views and an engaged core audience and readership of dads who think the same way as I do and want to read what I'm writing and are engaged in the process and want to have a two-way conversation with me as well and have a discussion over the things that I'm writing about, and maybe they're writing about the same thing. I would much rather have that core engaged audience rather than 20,000 views a week or whatever a good number is. It's steady. I know people don't really talk about exact numbers, but I'm pretty happy with the traffic I get. And like you say, I do get a lot of comments as well, which that's what I really love. And just recently, I read an article where it was a blog article, actually. I can't remember the name of it. I'm pretty sure I tweeted it out, but it was talking about the kind of taking a kind of extra mile approach to your customers and to your readers. And so I've tried to start to do that with the comments that I get. So I would always reply to a comment on the website. But more recently, what I tried to do is do much, rather than just a kind of glib, thanks for commenting, yeah, that's a great point, that was what I was doing. I've started to develop my responses and try and add more value to the discussion and to the website through comments and linking to other articles and linking to books that are relevant to the discussion and that kind of thing, and bringing quotes from other websites. So I've started to do that. It's time consuming, but I'm hoping that it's going to kind of further develop the site and make people want to engage more in that. So
yeah, I mean, I think you've got a good approach there, especially where you're adding more value in your comments rather than just putting a one-line reply. And that's something that I fall into myself, actually, because you just want to make sure that you get the reply, and then you might not have time to sit down and write a thoughtful reply, but you want to still reply anyways. Yeah, that's probably something I should fix. Okay.
There you go. We can do it together. Here's a challenge.
Yeah. So listen, Neil, tell me now, why does almost every, because yours is an exception, why does almost every dad blog sound like it's written by a faggot and or vagina and or like basically a woman?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is something that I picked up on quite early on when I was writing this. That does that. But the type of writing that I was doing was almost completely unique in the kind of sphere that I'd put myself into. So I started thinking that I was writing, a kind of traditional dad blog, which would be like writing about parenting and writing about like products and writing about just like, I don't know, kind of quite generic kind of
consumer
stuff.
Shit. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way of describing it. So that was what I envisaged, but I very, very quickly I realized that, well, that wasn't what I wanted to write, and that wasn't what people wanted to read, but also that probably 99% of the dad blogs that are out there, and there are thousands. I think in the UK, like parenting blogs, there's like 50,000 like parenting blogs in the UK. I think it's probably more than that, but I remember reading that one time, and there's about 3,000 dad blogs. Now, some of those aren't active, some of those are pretty big websites as well and get a lot of traffic, and the guys that are writing them are doing it full time. But everything on those websites is the same stuff. And again, I was thinking about this recently, and I was like, why do these blogs, why are they filled with product endorsements and sponsored blog posts and advertising and affiliate reviews, which I do review products on my site, but it's kind of like one in every 10 posts or something. I maybe like do a book review or something, but all these blogs, that's all they do, like all the time. But the reason is because they don't have anything really to say about what they're doing, and it doesn't. The problem with that is that it doesn't add value. But I guess going back to your question, like why are why are all these blogs, like, why do they all sound, exactly the same? Do you know what? Like, and I tweeted this out actually recently, and I wasn't joking, and I said that a lot of these blogs are a front for kind of feminism and anti-male and anti-traditional masculine and father values. That a lot of them are written by guys who are stay-at-home dads, which I don't have anything against in principle, but I don't think that that's the pinnacle of fatherhood, like some of them seem to. A lot of them are, would have a very liberal worldview. They would have a kind of a male feminist worldview, and the blogs are written from that kind of perspective, and a lot of them go into the kind of stray into this bizarre idea that against gender stereotypes, so they would like raise girls and boys in exactly the same way, and if their boys want to wear like pink, I mean at the extreme end, like if their boys want to wear like girls' clothes, then they'd let them, and if their girls want to wear boys' clothes, then they'd let them. That's the extreme, but others are like, there was one where he's like, I'm like the kind of thing about his website is like he writes about how he doesn't like these stereotypes, and it's like, I'm against the color pink, and my daughter's not a princess, and that's the kind of stuff that he writes about. And I just find all of that, it's quite bizarre, it's quite alien to me, but it also doesn't help anyone as well. I don't see that adds value to anyone's life. Maybe people want to read that, I don't know, but and the other thing as well is that, and I noticed this because I tracked my traffic early when I kind of started out, and I was still kind of finding my voice and finding out who I wanted to reach through my writing, that a lot of my traffic came from women and came from other parenting blogs, and particularly what you would call like I guess in the States you call it a mom blog. I would call it a mum blog or a mummy blog. Yeah. And so a lot of traffic is coming from women. So my premise is that a lot of these dad blogs, these kind of fronts for feminism, and these blogs that are written by like stay-at-home dads who have this kind of very liberal and I guess kind of weak approach to parenting they're not read by dads because they're not written for dads. They're written for women, and that's why dads don't want to read them. And I wrote a post. It's almost a year ago actually since I wrote it, but why reading dad blogs is a waste of time, which was the start of me kind of sitting in my stall and saying like what I'm writing, what I'm creating is not a dad blog. It's something much bigger and much more important than these guys who are like, reviewing like baby changing tables and prams and like and stuff. No, I'm not even joking. Like that's what, like if you read these sites, that's what these guys are doing. And like some of the bigger ones, like they'll be reviewing stuff that's not even related to being a dad, and you can just like, they'll like review cars or like trips out and stuff. And I know like maybe some of your listeners don't know this, but there are websites where you can sign up. So if you've got a website, you can sign up and you put all your details in, and then like PR companies and brands will contact you and say, you've got a blog, we've got a product, we will pay you money to feature our product on your blog. So your blog then gets basically turned into an advertising machine. And one of my issues with that is that I find that quite disingenuous, because like say, for example, imagine you're having a problem as a dad, and you're like, well, I don't know, I'm trying to think something that maybe you're like, well, I want to know how to get my kids to play outdoors more. So you like type into Google how to get my kids to play outdoors more. And then up comes this, all these like blog posts about trips out to this place and that place, and maybe reviews for like equipment that's meant to help your kids like play outdoors, and all of that is just like planted there by advertising. So it doesn't actually help the dads that are searching for that information or want that information. They're just getting sold a whole load of advertising by these websites, and I find that I see that as being quite dishonest. And I think what I wanted to create was an antidote to that, where I give the information without saying, here's a product that you can buy that can help you do this. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that's asked your question. But I guess the bottom line is that
you're actually trying to help people rather than make a quick buck.
Right, exactly.
Why do you think? And this is something that if you've watched TV, you notice it's in the ads and on some of the TV shows. Why do you think the media is trying to emasculate and feminize fathers?
Yeah, okay. This has been a big thing for me over the last 6 months, but probably since before then as well. And I wrote a post which you shared actually a couple of days ago, and thank you for that. Was a post which was actually in response to something I saw on Instagram, which was a kind of funny image of these dads like pretending to be pregnant, and it was a black and white. It was, I guess it was funny, and it probably was a little bit funny, but what that represented for me was this idea of the end of the male identity. And masculinity is an interesting word. I'm not sure that I like it, because I don't think it explains very well what we mean when we say masculinity. Like, what do we mean? And I like to talk about male identity and male energy, and I would say that those two things, so the identity and the energy of a male, go together to make what we would understand, or what certainly I would understand as masculinity. So when I talk about male energy or male identity, you can kind of interchange that with masculinity. But going back to what I was saying, I kind of got off track there a little bit. I think that there is a campaign, and whether this is actually a targeted campaign or not, I'm not sure, but there does seem to be a campaign, and the media are definitely part of that, to minimise and reduce the role of the father through denigrating the image of the male and our understanding of male identity, and to denigrate male energy and say that male energy, so when I say male energy I mean masculinity, they say that those are negative things, and that it would just be safer. This is what messages that I get from media, that it would be safer and it would be better for everyone if men just kind of behaved a bit more like women, or in extreme cases just turned into women, or maybe just disappeared altogether, and then society would be better, because like a liberal feminism, and especially third wave feminism, which I would see as being the most extreme form of feminism, would say that all the world's problems are caused by men, and if men all disappeared, then all the world's problems would go away, which is kind of funny, but that's what they would say. And so I believe that is part of this campaign. But I was also, that's been going on in my mind for a while, and that was in my mind when I wrote the feminization of fatherhood, which was about that, saying that has been going on for a long time, but we've missed it. We have, as men who believe in traditional values and believe in traditional masculinity, that we've missed it because we've been distracted by other things. And I talk about pornography, which I've written about a lot on the blog, and I talk about junk food and entertainment as well, which I do believe that we are given a huge amount of access to all three of those things, and I'm sure there's other things too, but certainly porn, junk food, and entertainment, that we're given a huge amount of access to that. And is that for a reason? Is it has it been done purposefully to distract us from the way that the male identity is being reduced, and male involvement is being reduced in society, I think across the world, but certainly in Western society? Is it targeted, or is it an accident? Whether it is or isn't, I think it's happening anyway. But I was also struck, I was listening to one of your podcasts where you were talking to that guy, who calls himself Uncle Hotep. That was great. It's a great podcast. I really enjoyed that. And some of the things that he was talking about really opened my eyes to this being a much wider thing, kind of outside the culture that I would belong to, being a white Christian guy in Western Europe, where he's talking about Black Lives Matter and how they're a kind of highly funded, highly supported political organization in the United States and globally as well. One of their key aims, whether it's stated or not, is to reduce and to minimize the role of the father in the family as well. And that, I think that's something that more and more dads probably across the world are starting to wake up to. And I'm sure that some of your listeners have probably started to notice that as well. And I think that if you are noticing that, you're not the only one. There's other people who are starting to wake up and say, there's something going on here, where these well-funded organizations have a clear and explicit agenda to reduce the role of the father in our society and in our families.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a couple of points there. I was thinking about, because I read that post yesterday while I was researching for preparing for this interview, and you said, why are these things, everything that makes men fat, slow, basically everything that turns men into a cuck is either free or extremely cheap, and then everything that makes them more manly, stronger, faster, more aggressive, more alert, is in I guess in England especially, is very, very expensive. Things like TRT. So, I think because the man's role traditionally is the provider and the protector, and he needs to be manly. He needs to have those masculine qualities that we just talked about in order to do that. If you remove those qualities from the man, he becomes unable to provide and protect for his family, or safeguard them from harm. And now the state becomes the provider and protector of the sort of family unit, and it makes the society much easier to control.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that there are too many coincidences in there, where like you say, and like I pointed out before, that things like pornography is so widely available that there's more than you could watch in an entire lifetime. And junk food, which is so cheap, probably some of the cheapest food that you could buy, is widely available, whereas like healthy food is much more expensive, much harder to get, harder to prepare. Entertainment as well. I mean, you could buy a Netflix subscription and never need to leave the house for entertainment ever again. But like you say, TRT, other things that make men sharper, like nootropics, for example. I don't want to go too far into that issue, but nootropics, so I'm talking about compounds, whether they're natural or synthetic, which enhance your mental performance. So a lot of those, especially in the UK, and I think in the States as well, but probably other places too, are very tightly controlled, and you can't get them. A lot of them are you can't get them at all, or they're prescription only. And why? I think we need to start asking the question why. Why are we given access to things that make us slow and sleepy and easier to control and denied access to things that would make us better men, stronger men, and like you say, better protectors as well.
And the other thing I noticed from that image that sort of kickstarted your article, it's like parenthood is only relevant from the perspective of the female, and there's no reason for you to consider the perspective of a male when it comes to parenthood. So basically, we don't, as fathers, we're not allowed to share our perspective on parenting and being a parent. We have to we just have to basically our experience is only from the perspective of an observer, and we're just there to basically support the woman who's giving birth to the child. So they completely, literally, they basically tuck their dicks into their legs and pose like pregnant women. And so like they completely erase their identity and become completely feminine in order to demonstrate that they are they will be loving parents. The assumption there is that a masculine man can't possibly be a good parent. Yeah,
I think that is a very good observation, and that's not something that I'd thought about too much. Although I do say in that post, they say that my culture wants me to become a woman, and I think that is why, because the image suggests, and I think other images that we are given suggest, that the only way that a father can share in being a part of raising a child is by becoming a woman, because otherwise, what would he know about about pregnancy and childbirth and so on, and I've faced that like in real life from people and from women, certainly from more than one woman, where they say what would you this is the kind of thing that I've had from other people, people I've worked with in previous jobs actually. What would you know about childbirth, and what would you know about pregnancy? And I know a lot because I'm there. Like, I've had 2 kids. I was in the delivery room when both of them were born. Both times my wife lost a lot of blood. She wasn't conscious. I was fully conscious. I was fully alert both times. I saw everything. I know every moment of what went on. So this idea that men don't have a share in that process and don't have an equal share in raising children as well is completely flawed and I think dangerous as well. That's what I would say.
What do you think the role of the father is in the current year, and do you think it's changed from the olden days?
Yeah, it's interesting because I guess up until this point in our chat, I've been quite negative about our kind of modern times, but I think if you look back at, in terms of the way that fathers are involved in raising their kids and the time that fathers spend with their children, certainly I know in the United States and in the UK that since the 1970s the amount of time that fathers spend with their kids has doubled. So I think from per day from about 45 minutes to an hour and a half per day. So I would say if I get 2 hours with my kids on a day that I work pretty hard, I work long hours, leave early in the morning, come back, can come back late at night. If I get 2 hours with my kids on a weekday, then that's pretty good, and I'll try and get more time at the weekend. But that is double, on average, double what time kids were getting with their fathers, back in the 1970s, which is good. I think that's really positive, and I think that there are signs and some studies which have shown that that children benefit the more time that they have their fathers. And there's a lot of statistics that show that fatherless households, are much more likely to produce a lot of the social problems, like, the kids involved in crime and other things as well, and suicides. A lot of the kind of social problems that we have now, a lot of that stems from families where there isn't a father, and there isn't a visible father figure. So I think that's really positive. But I think there is a risk that in developing that part of a father-son relationship, that you kind of start to blur the roles and blur the relationship between a father and a son and a mother and a son. And I firmly believe that those relationships not only should be different but cannot be the same. So a father cannot have the same relationship with his son as the mother does, because the father has a completely different, again, and this is what I'm talking about, masculinity. A man has a totally different sense of identity. He has a totally different sense of has a totally different way of expressing himself and his energy and his thought process. And so he physically, because of the biological and psychological differences of him being a father, he has to have a different relationship with his son. And I think there are things that I can teach my son and my daughter that my wife can't ever teach, just because we're made different, completely different, and think different things and value different things. And she has a lot to offer raising my kids. I would always want her to be there and to be bringing the kids up, but I've got a lot to teach them too. And a lot of that comes down to, I wrote early on, I think again almost a year ago, about building resilient boys, and talking about rough play and shaping, using discipline, and using the outdoors, and using rough play and rough housing to shape and to train boys and to teach boys how to behave, and how to grow into older boys and eventually young men. That is a part of their life that only you as a father can fulfill. And I wrote recently about that same idea, but with girls as well, and I had a great response to that. I think both of those articles on rough play have been well received, but the one for girls was different, because I had a lot of comments and a lot of responses from mothers who thanked me for writing it and said that they thought that it was a great point to raise, because that was a role that fathers and a real benefit to the father-daughter relationship, that this kind of like rough and tumble play can have a big thing. And I had one single mother actually sent me a message and said that was one of her biggest regrets for her daughter, was because this daughter had grown up without a father. She'd never had that element of rough play in her life, and now her mother was kind of noticing that she was more risk averse, and she would kind of hold back in sports and in other situations, and she attributed that to the fact that she never had this kind of physically intimate relationship with her father. Now, when I say physically intimate, like some people are like, because we've got this kind of like, anything that a father does with his daughter, he's obviously trying to like assault her or rape her,
yes.
which is sick.
It's yeah. Sorry to cut you off. The minute you said it, that's exactly where my mind went, because it's always like the dad is like some sort of monster. You're conditioned to think that way.
Yeah, because dads are the bad guys. We're the guys who are, that's what the media wants you to think, which is lies, actually, because I think I definitely read this. I wish people are going to ask me for a source. You could probably find this statistic, but more, so infanticide, so that would be like killing a child, is more likely to be committed by a woman, and boys are more likely to be victims of infanticide than girls as well. So anyway, that's a kind of aside, but this idea that a dad is a bogeyman in a relationship, and that, he's like, he's just a rapist in waiting, is outrageous, completely outrageous, completely sick. Just makes me so sad. And I think that I'm sure that there are dads who hold back on the amount of physical affection and physical interaction that they have with their daughters for fear of being called a predator or a paedophile, which is outrageous. But that's the situation we're in just now, and I think we need to reclaim that. We need to reclaim that from. And I see it coming from a kind of the liberal and of course that idea comes from feminism. If you're a feminist and you say, well, men are dangerous, men are a threat to society and a threat to the future of the human race, and of course dads are men too, and they come under that, and that's something that we need to fight against. Definitely.
They have those programs, or I don't know if it was a hashtag, but they have these programs called teaching men not to rape. They should have a program or a hashtag, teach women not to kill their children. Right. Yeah. Can you imagine if that happened though? I mean, that would be considered? That would be completely outrageous. But facts aren't sexist, So, yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it would just never happen, would it? It would just never happen.
Do you feel like you mentioned that your relationship with your son is different than your son's relationship with his mother? Do you feel like your relationship to your son is different to your relationship with your daughter, or should it be, or should you treat them basically the same? What is the paradigm that's there? Is it the exact same paradigm, or is it slightly different?
Yeah, I mean, my kids are still young, so I'm still developing this, but I do treat them differently, and I do raise them differently as well. So I think it was something you said earlier on about fathers being and men being a protector and a provider, and I want my son to grow up valuing and being able to do both of those things, to be a protector and to be a provider. So I want him to grow up to be resilient and to be strong. I want him to be athletic, but I'm not going to be one of these dads who like pushes him into sports or makes him want to, or forces him into kind of being a sporting hero. That's a kind of cliche, but I don't want to do that, but I do want him to value physical exercise and physical effort. I want him to value work and to value physical labor as well. That was something that I was taught as a young man, and I worked. I did like physical labor jobs from when I was 16, and I had to fall back on that in 2008 when we had this financial crash, and I couldn't get work anywhere. So I worked as a gardener for 9 months, because that's what I had to do to provide for my wife and to pay the bills. That's what I had to do. So those are the things that I want him to grow up and value. I want him to know martial arts as well. I think martial arts are important. I think I didn't do any kind of martial arts really until I was in my mid-20s, and I think I regret that as well. I think martial arts teach you a lot about balance and about self-control and about understanding your own physical and mental limits. Those are things that I learned through martial arts, and I want him to learn those things. And I think for my daughter, I want her to, and it's a more difficult one. I've struggled to write about this as well, because like for my son, I'm like, yeah, like I know what I want for him. I know that's easy. But when it comes to my daughter, the way that I want to raise her, like I want her to grow up to be, I want her to be a strong, strong-willed woman. I don't want her to be, pushover, or to be somebody that people can take advantage of. And that's important for me to raise her in that way, because as her protector, I need to raise her in a way that one day she can look out for herself up to a point, because I won't always be there. You know, she's just 2.5 just now, but in the future, you know, she'll be older. She'll probably leave home, and I won't be there to look after her. So she needs to know how to look after herself up to a point. Like I want her to make good choices when it comes to men, and I want her to make good choices when it comes to kind of life in general as well. So I think teaching her those things as well. I think the same as well for sports and for physical athleticism. I want her to value those things as well. Like I don't know, it kind of annoys me when people say like, oh, you know, my kids aren't very sporty. It's like, well, your kids, they don't like any sport. They can't do any sport. They can't like they can't throw a ball. You know, it's such a self-defeating statement. Oh, my kids don't like sports. You know, like, well, there's a lot of sports out there. You know, there's not like one thing. I mean, like you could like hiking. Like I love hiking. That's one of my favorite things to do. You know, like all you need is like a pair of good shoes to go hiking, and a bottle of water. I would say that's your kind of minimum for a short hike. So, you know, I just it doesn't wash for me. So I want her to certainly to value those things as well. But I do have a different approach. I think boys benefit from a kind of, I don't want to say harsher, because I don't think that's the right word, but for, you know, if I'm going to bring him into the world as a boy and raise him to be a man, you know, like being a man's tough. Being a man is hard. It's hard physically, it's hard mentally. He's probably going to be the principal provider. He's going to be, well, you know, you'd call it the main breadwinner in his family. So he needs to know how to be able to do that. You know, I want to teach him that, teach him to be tough and physically, mentally tough as well. But, you know, I think that can be done in a way that is loving and is supportive as well. And that's what I want to develop. And I think I need to be careful, because, you know, he's only 4, so I haven't quite figured out how exactly I'm going to do that. But those are the things I want to do. And that's what this dad does is about that journey and about how I'm going on that journey and bringing other people with me who want to do the same thing as well.
I think if you're a son and daughter, don't become feminists when they grow up, you've succeeded.
Yeah, I would settle for that. Like, I mean, even if they end up being like liberal or left wing, you know, as long as they're not. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
You're working on a book now, right? Are you?
That's right. That is right. Yeah, I've been talking about that for a couple of months. I think I mentioned a couple of blog posts. Talking about it on my Periscope channel as well. So, yeah, the book thing is an interesting one, because it started out. At first, I was like, well, I've got a kind of growing list of subscribers on this daddoes.com, and I wanted to give them something as a thank you for subscribing, because I really appreciate every single one of those. I got it's almost 150 guys that subscribe, which I find incredible. That there are 150, and they are mainly men. I would say probably 98% men who have filled in a form and said, I want to know what's going on this website all the time, which that's incredible for me. So, and I wanted to say thank you. So I started to write a book, which was a compilation of my best and most read blog posts. But as I've been doing that, it's developed and it's really changed, and it's given me a chance to revisit a lot of what I've written and develop it and bring it up to date with how my thinking has changed as well. And I've also I've got some totally new stuff that I've written for the book as well. So it's ended up taking me a lot longer than I thought it was gonna. I thought maybe it would take me a few weeks to do, but I think we're like 6 months in, and now I'm since I started working on it, but I'm kind of working on it most of the time when I'm writing. I'm working on the book, and I'm hoping to have an early draft of that by the end of March this year, 2017. So, and I'm going to put that out to subscribers, and then if that's well received and everything goes well, I'm hopefully going to self-publish that on Kindle, and hopefully paperback as well later on this year as well. So that's going to be my kind of main effort. I'm not sure what the book's going to be called yet, but the way that I've developed it is I've got these kind of 6 aspects of what I would see as being the kind of most valuable aspects of being a father in the age that we live in just now, and bringing them together, and how do you develop those, and drawing in from my own experiences, but offering advice to the reader is how you can do that too, and how you can use these aspects to further improve, how you do your job as a dad as well. So look out for that. It's like I say, I think it's getting close to being done. I think I said there were 6 kind of parts. I'm halfway through part 5 at the moment. So we're getting there. It's coming slowly, but I mean, I'm working on this. I was saying this to you before we started recording, and I work on my website in my spare time, and I work full time as well. I work in property management full time, and I work long hours. I'm doing that, so like I'll maybe get a couple of hours in the evening on a weekday to work on my website. Sometimes I get longer if my wife's away, and I'll get longer in the evenings. But I need to balance my blog with having a good relationship with my wife and being a good father as well. Imagine if I wrote a blog about being a good dad and then like I neglected my kids because of it. That'd be pretty crap. So I need to balance all these things. But yeah, it's coming. So but it's only going to be offered to subscribers like one for free one time. I'm only going to do it once. So if any of your listeners are wanting to get on and get in on that, then I would say go to my website. There's boxes there. You can stick your email in and sign up for my emails, and you'll get sent it when it's ready. So, yeah.
Yeah, and for the listeners, if you have a dad bod, then Neil has an ebook called Dad Bod Fat Loss, which you can download. So you can subscribe to his mailing list and get that ebook, and that might be useful for you. Because Neil, I've seen his before and after pics. He's made he's got some gains, and he's doing
losses. I lost. Yeah, I lost. I think I can't remember exactly how much. It says that on the post, but it was like 8 kilos in 12 weeks, I think. Which I don't recommend actually. I would say if you're committed for the long term, do it over a shorter period of time, a longer period of time. But thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
So you can find Neil at thisdaddoes.com. That's just spelled how it's said. And what's your Twitter handle?
It's at thisdaddoes as well. Okay. So it's just the same as the blog.
And you do have a Facebook page as well, right? But you're not very active there.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, I've kind of I do have a Facebook page. All my new posts get put up on there, and I also try and put my Periscope on there as well. So Periscope, I put more time into Periscope than I do on Facebook. But yeah, I mean, check out my Facebook. It's you can just search This Dad Does, and you can like the page, and then you'll get alerts and so on as well.
We'll put all your links in the show notes. Neil,
Okay,
I wanted to thank you for giving us a little bit of your time. I really appreciate it.
thank you. No, it's been great. I've really enjoyed it, and yeah, I'll.
I'm
Yeah, it's
looking forward.
good to speak to you.
I'm looking forward to the book as well. But stay on the line for a few minutes while I close out the show.
Okay.
All right, there you have it. That's the end of another episode of the Becoming the Alpha Muslim podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, please subscribe and leave me a rating and review on iTunes. That's how people find the show, and that's how more people can benefit from the show. Trying to get on the new and noteworthy section. So you'll find the show notes at the blog, becomingthealphamuslim.com, and I'll put in links to Neil's website, Twitter, Periscope, and Facebook page for you if you want to follow Neil, which I do recommend that you do. So that's all from me. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.